Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of the Marvel Legends Gamerverse Kingpin, and you would have seen part 1 the other day, and really liked showing off the different poses he could do. But today is about posing him against Spider-Man Miles Morales and Spider-Man Peter Parker. So if I come up onto the platform, that's what you're going to see in front of you. The two Spider-Men and Kingpin. And after doing the first bit of footage on this guy, I wasn't satisfied. I had to pose him out some more. And I even had a go at posing him with some of my McFarlane's weapons from the accessory pack. And they didn't do too badly actually when you pose those weapons with him, because he's such a big guy. The weapons kind of looked undersized, most of them except for a couple of them which were kind of big guns. Then they were more in keeping with what the figure looked like. But the weapon I've come up with, I never thought it would work, but I do remember that when we did see Kingpin in the TV series or the comics or the animation series, I didn't tend to see him with big guns. Being such a big man, he probably didn't need it. But I did see him use a hand pistol from time to time. So I've found a hand pistol from my McFarlane's accessory pack, and I'm going to pose him with that now. So let's pull it back and see what that looks like. So here he is, and I don't know what you think, but it's grown on me, this look. And that's him with, I think that's known as a Beretta, because I've got four of those, and I've also got 4 Glocks, but the Glocks are far too small. The Glock suit figures more like the Catwoman figures I've got. But I'm going to show you another dynamic with that weapon and put on the other head sculpt. But I think it works well. It looks not bad on camera, but in real life it looks really good. So I'll change the dynamic and change the head sculpt. So I've changed around his body position. And even though that gun is to scale, and so is this figure, you'd expect it to look like that in his hand, excuse me, if he picked up a gun, because he's so big. And I think it works. I like him with that head sculpt on. So I'm going to do one more and then we're going to get into the combat poses. So this is the last one with the hand pistol. And it's not a bad pose. It's got it hanging to the side of his body, and overall that looks okay. So yeah, that's Kingpin. So now it's time to crack on with the old combat poses and see what we can do. We won't be using any flight stands. I'm going to try and keep it as basic as I can, but it could be a long one. And incidentally, if you're wondering what that is, that was featured on my Miles Morales, Spider-Gwen and the Spot review. And with the Spot figure, that's what comes with it, because he's capable of shifting in and out of time. When Spider-Man physically touches him, he also goes physically in and out of time, which is what that's a representation of, his head and his web shooting hand. I like it. So no more waffling, let's try a few poses. So let's get on with it. So there's Peter Parker looking directly at Kingpin, squaring up to him, preparing for a fight. And there's Miles Morales looking up in amazement at what he's seeing. So let's come in close and see if we can get some nice shots. And that's not bad when you see it from that angle. drop it down lower, and it's not bad at all. And I'll say now, Mars Morales, he's a very kind of leaner looking figure, so his feet aren't too big, so there's a chance he might topple over. But I wanted to do it au naturel and show that it can be done without a stand or a bit of blue tack, which is sometimes the trick I use. Let's get round to see Mars Morales. Okay, let's move on with this and keep those fighting fists on that I've now got on with the figure Kingpin, and keep the fighting fists on for both the Spider-Men. So this is an interesting one because I did try this pose out last night off camera. Wasn't sure about it, but I had to show Kingpin dealing with both Spider-Men at the same time. So we're coming on Peter Parker, and he's kind of brought his fist down on his head and knocked 6 bells out of him. Let's go back. Not bad. And we'll go from Mars Morales' point of view. Wasn't sure how to pose him on this one because he's really getting side swiped by Kingpin. And it was a bit of a fiddly diddly one with the balance of that figure. But let's come around and see that. That's not too bad actually, when you look at it like that. Not bad at all. Good thing about this figure, yes, it's not as articulate as it could be, but there's enough about it to pose it and create scenes like this in your display. So he doesn't have to be super articulate like the Spider-Men, because they've got to get into spider positions. He just needs to be articulate enough, and he certainly is. I think he is anyway. So let's try another one. Another interesting one. I'll come around this side first. Doesn't look like much is going on from this far, but let's come in close for a bird's eye view. And that's Kingpin standing over Mars Morales with the camera at a funny angle. So let's correct that and come around the other side. Yeah, it's all right, not the best. And I'll try it on the other side with Peter Parker Spider-Man. So there's Kingpin with a change out of head sculpt, and I've reversed the roles now. It's Peter Parker on the back foot, and that seems to work better actually. Maybe I needed more time to pose out Mars Morales better, or maybe it's the fact I've put Kingpin into this pose and he's kind of known for attacking his victims this way, raising up both hands into a fist and then bringing them down together with an almighty force that it normally kills its victims. And it did with Peter Parker here against Kingpin, but not this Kingpin. The Kingpin for this wave, the Spider-Verse wave, he's out there and he's good. I like him, but I like this figure because I've been looking at the reviews, and yeah, the fans do agree he's got a combination of being a kind of animation figure or a real life guy. He's got a nice balance there. So at the end of the day, I'm pleased to have him. And since I bought this figure a couple of days ago, I'll get a close up on Peter Parker. I'll get his view. Yeah, since I bought this, the figure's out of stock again. This is a real low shot, but I do like that shot. Okay, so we're going to move it all on now. We're going to change out one of the hands of Kingpin, and I'm going to try something really fiddly. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So this is a pose I've got him in. But posing him, is not the issue here. I've actually changed out the other hand for this one, which is kind of a cross between a gesture hand, a gripping hand and a trigger hand, and I'm trying to create something. So I'm going to do Spider-Man Peter Parker first, and then Miles Morales Spider-Man second, and see if it works. But I'm 50-50 on it. Not happy. I'll say that now, not happy. He wasn't playing ball. I'm going to try and get it because it would look so good on camera. I've had to settle for this one where you can tell he is suspended off the platform, but it's not what I want to see. I'll come round. Yeah, not happening for me. I'll do another one. Well, I'll try the one I'm trying to get, see what that does. Now this is what it should be, or close enough, and I can't tell you how fiddly that was, but this Kingpin didn't have a lot of expectations when it came to him fighting a Spider-Man. I could see that in the reviews I saw, but I thought I can try something and see if it works, and it is fiddly, but it can work. Now that's not necessarily the Spider-Man dynamic I wanted, but I'm trying to get it in the ballpark for you guys. So let's come around this side, and there you can see he's got the fighting fist on Kingpin. I've tilted his head up towards Peter Parker, and I like it. I like this look better than the one you've just seen. So I'm going to try it with Miles Morales and see if that works. I think he'd be better because his feet are slightly narrower, so you can get them into the hand of Kingpin, quite like that. That's not bad. He's actually looking at him, which I'm not sure if I got right, but it looks like I've got it right. But that's the key right there. That gripping hand, or that hand of sorts, can hold the cane and the pistol that I've demonstrated, but it also, you can get the foot in there, you can create the dynamic here, and you can do it with his wrists, because I've already done those poses, but I don't think I'll be showing you those today. At the end of the day, I'm pleased I got this one off because it was doing my head in. Okay, let's try Miles Morales. So at long last, one that was easy. I think because Miles Morales is a slimmer build figure and a bit shorter, I think when it comes to the gravity of these figures and getting the balance right and not letting them tip over, he was a lot easier to do. I like the Peter Parker one equally as a pose, and I like this one, but this one in terms of achievement on the actual pose was far easier. So I'm going to do a couple of more like this with Peter Parker and Miles Morales, and basically change out their heads and their fighting fists, and bring in the web shooting hands and their masks, and that's a nice angle. That's the sort of thing I like to see. I really do. And you can quite easily, now you know that that pose can be achieved, put this back in your display. It doesn't take up that much room. And if you have trouble with the foot position, that's a lot easier to put in than Peter Parker's, but if you did, a little bit of blue tack out of sight, that's the trick I always use, and the thing stays in place. But let's get round to that one. That's a bit better. So yeah, so I'm happy with them. Let's move around and go on to the change out of the hands and heads. I'll just put the masks on now. I've kept the fighting fists in because I wanted to see that very quickly. And I do like that. That dynamic there. I'll do the same for Peter Parker as well. I want to see him with the mask on and the fighting fists. Right then, very quick that was. Let's get in Peter Parker. Now this is what I'm talking about. At long bloody last. I know it seems irrelevant to you guys probably watching, but that was such a hard figure to understand, that Spider-Man. Finding the right weight of him to act as a counterbalance for Kingpin so he didn't fall over. And I found that pose that can create what I'm looking at, which is a good pose. So I'll come in close from this side, and I do like the way Spider-Man looks from there, coming in close. And what the trick is, I find, you learn this anyway, rather than put him in the grip of Kingpin, and this is a general rule anyway, and then pose him out, you're better off doing it separately. Maybe it's common sense and obvious, but I didn't do that to begin with. I just thought I'd be clever and try and do it in situ, and it didn't work. So what I did was come into Spider-Man first. I created that pose. That's what I had to do. So once that was locked in place, I didn't have to worry about him. Then I got Kingpin into the right pose for that figure, and that arm had to be lowered, because if it was up higher, his head's not flexible enough to tilt that high up unless I changed the rotation of the body, and it was all getting too complicated. So I've kept it simple in order to achieve what I think is a good pose. So that's what I've done. So I'm going to pull it round to this side and get that one, and I do like that. Yeah, definitely my favourite pose out of him and Miles Morales, but I'm sure I could get Miles Morales better because he's a lot easier to get into position than the Spider-Man figure. So let's put in the web shooting hands and see what that looks like. So he's got his web shooting hands in. Again, I didn't have to change the pose once I knew it. I didn't have to fiddle about with it. I just had to get that foot back into the gripping hand of the Kingpin and get the balance of the figure right. Because he's tight in his ankle joints, he's not going to swivel off somewhere. And I quite like the way that looks. Not a bad dynamic. And I've put the cane now back in his hand, so I've had to take out the fighting fist. And I've changed out the head sculpt, if you may have noticed that. Let's come round to Kingpin's point of view. That's a nice shot. I like that. So yeah, let's bring in Miles Morales now and see if I can improve on his pose in the grip of Kingpin. So this is a lot better for Miles Morales, and with the two poses with the masks on, wish I could have created that kind of dynamic with the head sculpts on, but it is what it is. It's a practicing thing. It's also to demonstrate the fact that Kingpin can interact with Spider-Man a lot more than he was given credit for, and that's not bad at all. Let's come in close. That's nice. So yeah, I think I'm going to try one more, but I'm not sure if it's going to work. So that's nice. Definitely happier with that pose on Miles Morales there. So let's come to the last two and see if it works. Now, you don't have to take this bit seriously, because this was me probably taking it a little too far, because I was determined to try and do it when I heard he can't wrap his arms around Spider-Man, and I wanted to see what it was like. And I've tried to create him. He hasn't wrapped his arms around him, but he's gripping him with the forearms and the fists, and Spider-Man's head's gone down. I'm going to tilt the head down actually, see if this looks better. Well, it kind of works and it doesn't. I've turned him a little bit more sideways on, and from there it kind of doesn't look too bad. I'm not going to be doing it anyway once I've finished filming it, because it's not a completely tight pose, as I call it, where he's very bulky. He does rotate well in his elbow joints and his wrists, but it's not stable enough, that figure, for it to stay there long term, and I can imagine it just slipping out of there. So that's just an experiment to prove I could actually get that position but not have him totally wrapped up by Kingpin. Let's bring in Peter Parker. So this works a little bit better simply because this Spider-Man Peter Parker is taller than Miles Morales. So where his biceps come, Kingpin is able to hold him in that position better. And I've changed out his head sculpt if you haven't noticed. So that looks overall better than the Miles Morales. But the Miles Morales looks good, you just have to fiddle with it because he's such a tinier figure, more narrow, it's hard to get the pose that you're looking at now. Let's come in from the side. Right, I think I'm going to wind it up now, bring out the last poses with these guys and leave it there. So I would say this is a pose leading up to the last pose. Both his fighting fists are in and that head sculpt is on, but you'll see him with the other head sculpt in a sec. And I've posed out Miles Morales Spider-Man one last time. This is how he's going to go back in my display, and I like that. There is a chance I could put the Miles Morales head sculpt on, but highly unlikely, as I've had him that way for some time. So the mask will stay on. And then we come over to Peter Parker in that classic Spider-Man man look, the comic book look. And I said before, they found a nice balance of the animation look with the comic book look. I like that Spider-Man pose. I've left him with a fighting fist in to emphasize the web shooting hand. So let's go back to Kingpin and pose him out one last time, and that will be the pose he'll be put back in my display with. I've enjoyed this one. At times it's been fiddly, but I've enjoyed it. So guys, this is the final pose. I hope you enjoyed what I've been trying to show you, which is mainly Kingpin, and that it is possible to have him interacting with his Spider-Man figures, making physical contact. Demonstrated a bit more articulation than I thought he could do, and thoroughly enjoyed posing him and putting on the different head sculpts which you've seen today. So I think he's going to be my main man when it comes to Kingpin. I think of course I like the TV Kingpin, but he works well with Daredevil. And speaking of Daredevil, there might come a time where I have them two up against each other in combat poses. And we'll come along to Peter Parker. I did mention I wasn't going to put him back in my display this way, but being I mentioned the fact about his head sculpt, I thought we'd get it on camera one last time. And I really love that figure. I like that Spider-Man pose actually. Not always necessary to put both web shooting hands in. You can have a fighting fist in with a web shooting hand and create a bit more of a personality with the figure. And that's nice. And then over with Miles Morales, well, I like his web shooting hand, so he's got them both back in. And I love that head sculpt. Miles. Looking forward to the third installment, Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse. That's what I've been hearing on the internet from those in the know. So on that note, I'll say thanks for watching. And before I say see you again next time, I've had a bit of a good couple of weeks. I first of all couldn't get Kingpin, so I got Iron Man and Second World War II Wolverine, and love those figures and posed them out for the review on the channel. And then basically I picked up an upgrade on my Mandalorian, so that will be the next thing you'll be seeing. And I love my Mandalorians, but I had to get it because of the price, and I'll tell you all about that in the next review. So I say again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.